Imagine surviving an execution, being sent to prison for decades, helping the very government that locked you away, and then dying just moments before telling your life story to Hollywood. It sounds like a movie, but every one of those moments happened to one man. His name was Charles Lucky Luciano. Some called him America's greatest criminal mastermind. Others called him the man who transformed organized crime forever. But what made Luciano truly dangerous wasn't how many enemies he had. It was how differently he thought. Because while other mob bosses fought bloody wars for power, Lucky Luciano built an empire that operated like a corporation. And that's why, nearly a century later, his influence is still discussed whenever the history of organized crime is told. This is the story of the man who changed the mafia forever. Long before he became the most influential crime boss in America, Luciano was simply Salvatore Lucania, a young immigrant who arrived in New York from Sicily with his family. Life on the Lower East Side was harsh. Crime wasn't just everywhere. It was often seen as one of the few paths to money and respect. As a teenager, Luciano reportedly made money by demanding protection payments from neighborhood children. Most paid, one refused. Instead of attacking him, Luciano admired the boy's courage. That boy was Meyer Lansky. It was the beginning of one of the most powerful partnerships in organized crime. Unlike many mafia leaders of his time, Luciano didn't care about ethnicity. He cared about business. He worked with Italians, Jewish gangsters, and anyone else who could make money alongside him. It was a simple idea, but it would change everything. Then came the night that nearly ended his life. In 1929, Luciano was kidnapped by unknown attackers. He was beaten so badly that many believed he wouldn't survive. His body was left for dead, but somehow, he lived. The attack permanently damaged the muscles around one of his eyes, giving him the drooping eyelid seen in almost every famous photograph. Some historians believe surviving this attack helped earn him the nickname Lucky. Others argue the nickname came from different events, whatever its true origin. After that night, Luciano seemed almost impossible to stop, and he was only getting started. The early 1930s were filled with violence. Powerful mafia bosses fought deadly wars to control New York. Instead of accepting endless bloodshed, Luciano saw a different future. After two of the era's dominant bosses were removed from power in separate conflicts, Luciano helped reshape how organized crime operated. Rather than declaring himself the supreme boss, he supported the creation of a governing body known as the Commission. Think of it as a board of directors. The major crime families met to settle disputes, divide territories, and avoid costly wars whenever possible. It was an idea that made organized crime more structured, and in many ways, more profitable. Luciano hadn't simply won power, he had changed the system itself. But no empire lasts forever. In 1936, prosecutor Thomas E. Dewey secured Luciano's conviction on charges related to compulsory prostitution. He was sentenced to decades in prison. For most men, that would have been the end. For Luciano, it was another unexpected turning point. As World War II intensified, U.S. officials grew concerned about security at New York's waterfront. Authorities later credited Luciano with helping use his influence over dock workers and underworld contacts to support wartime security efforts, although historians continue to debate how extensive his role actually was. Whatever the full story, one fact is certain. His sentence was eventually commuted, but there was a price. He would never again live freely in the United States. Instead, he was deported to Italy. Most people would disappear after exile. Lucky Luciano wasn't most people. He secretly traveled to Cuba, hoping to manage his criminal connections from Havana. It almost worked, but the United States pressured the Cuban government to send him back to Italy before he could fully reestablish himself. Even from overseas, his name continued to command attention. Years passed. The empire he'd helped build lived on without him. Then came one final twist. Hollywood wanted his story. On January 26, 1962, Luciano traveled to Naples Airport to meet a film producer interested in making a movie about his extraordinary life. But the meeting never happened. Before they could even begin talking, Lucky Luciano suffered a fatal heart attack. The man who had survived assassination attempts, gang wars, prison, and exile was defeated by his own heart. He was later buried in New York under his birth name, Salvatore Lucania, not Lucky Luciano. The name history would remember wasn't the one carved on his grave. Whether you see him as a ruthless criminal or a strategic mastermind, one thing is impossible to deny. Lucky Luciano didn't just rise through organized crime. He transformed it, and in doing so, he left behind a legacy that outlived the man himself. If you enjoyed this story and want more true tales about the most powerful figures in Mafia history, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and tell us in the comments, which mob boss should we uncover next?